Okay. So I thought I'd do a little bit more on this one, which I started. I think I started a week or two ago. I can't remember. And that was another one that I've been working on in the Rayleigh class. So both using acrylics. So last week I did a little bit of watercolour demonstration. So I thought this week I'll do acrylics. We're not here next week, so I've got a 1 week break next week. So don't come in next week. But back the week after. There's also the end of May, there's 1 week when I'm having a break as well. So I was thinking when we come back, I'll stick with the flowers project for one more week when we're back. And I thought I'd do something maybe along the lines of blossom trees or could be bluebell woods or something like that. Something that's more of a landscape incorporating flowers. So this was the little sketch I did on Sunday with the South End Planning Group. We went to Sutton Road Cemetery, which is where lovely, all the blossoms were at.
Nice.
So I'll do something along those lines with that. So this, with something like this, I was thinking the colours, there's some almost like quite pinky colours in here. And there's almost like a kind of, well, this is more like a kind of coral pink, so more of an orangey pink. Whereas these bits here, to me, are slightly more purpley or magenta-y pink. So I find with this, I need like something like either a rose or a magenta colour, as well as perhaps just like a cadmium red. So it's having slightly purpley colours, purpley reds, as well as orangey reds in the palette, to be able to get naturalistic colours. So I started this morning. I sketched it out with pastel pencil. It's acrylics. I'm trying working on like a bit of cardboard, or this one was actually on paper. And I found that sometimes with some of my boards, the acrylics haven't stuck very well unless I put it on quite thickly. So I think it's probably the primer I'm using or something like that. So I thought, well, I'll try a few on paper. So something like this, I probably would tackle perhaps petal by petal. I was thinking to do a wash over everything, but I think it would have washed my drawing out. I want to kind of keep that. So I'll just do a little bit around here. I tend to start with a slightly darker tones and then work the light into it. So I'll make up a pink using some magenta and white. So it's going to be quite a nice strong pink. Kind of working here, but I think that's a bit too bright, so I'll add a little bit of the orangey red, so just a bit of both mixed together really. That's a bit closer to that. Now that bit in there is going to go quite dark. Working on the cardboard, it is quite absorbent, but it also means that I can put quite a thin layer on. So what I found with working on the boards was it didn't sit well when I wanted to paint very thinly. So I could just get all that down with very thin paint, and then maybe just work some slightly stronger paint over the top, which is what I'll do. Just strengthen that up a little bit. This approach is pretty much the same as if I was working with oils as well. I'll just get some areas down that I can then blend. And that's a little bit stronger colour on the edge here. Just dry my brush a little bit, and then add a little bit of white into the mix for the brighter areas. So these bits are quite bright, and while the paint's still wet, I can still blend the colours in. And the challenge I have with acrylics is that they dry so quickly. The blending can be quite tricky. So we'll do something like that.
Can you kind of wet them or not? Or once it's slapped it on, that's the end of it?
Wet them to keep them damp? You might be able to. Perhaps if you've got like a mister or an atomizer, you might be able to just sort of keep them a little bit, a little bit wet that way. Mm-hmm. Have it probably working onto a slightly damp surface will give you a bit more time. You can add mediums in to slow the drying, which I occasionally use, but they can thin the paint a little bit too much. The paint doesn't seem quite as strong. think something like that would, and then actually around here it comes a bit lighter to the edges. Bit there. This bit actually is pretty much the same tone as this. I will work some of that in, sorry, slightly darker. That can kind of blend into there. And then this edge is quite a lot lighter as well, so something like that. And generally I use a reasonable size brush. I don't want to go too small. And there's a few just kind of highlights there that are just a little bit lighter. I'll probably work into that just to get some of that a little bit lighter still. This bit here can go darker, so I'm just going to find another brush and just go a little bit darker there. Just putting a tiny bit of blue in with that, just to make that darker. Get a darker tone. One of the challenges I find with acrylics is they dry a little bit darker than how they look appear wet. Whereas oil paints, they stay the same. So that's one thing I do find a little bit tricky sometimes. So that bit there can just darken out in here. And these very dark bits, I'll just use almost like a black colour. And I think a thinner brush actually. So this is, I don't know if you can see that from there, it's like a very long thin brush called a rigger. And these are really good for any kind of thin, long lines. And I tend to make the paint a little bit more fluid so that it will flow. Little lines like these little bits coming out the middle, they can be, sort of pop them in with that kind of brush. And then the last bit will be to put something around the outside. Again, I try and use as big a brush as I can for that. So I'm quite fond of having quite a range of different brush shapes and sizes. So this is I think this is a green, and I'll just mix a little bit of grey or maybe brown or blue in with that. Just to darken that down. Some of these photos have come out a little bit too black and a bit too black in the dark, so I wouldn't necessarily want to make them quite that dark. I cut in with the, and again you can sort of refine the drawing and the shaping of the edges a little bit as you go. Like a square brush like that. And then probably just soften it out a little bit at the edges. That way I can kind of create a nice sharp, which is sort of working up to an edge, and then just softening out. Is that anybody want to ask anything? Questions?
Just here to the motion, Andrea.
All good? Yeah. Right, okay.
Looking good.
Good. Yeah, so that's basically how I approach it. I tend to paint very similar way with oil paints, it's not too different. It's just that I probably have to, if I want to blend things, I've got to work a little bit quicker with the acrylics, and maybe just work small areas at a time.
So will you finish that, or you just?
Nah, that, not unless I need to do another demo. Yeah, no, just do a demo.
Lovely, nice colours.